Okay, guys, the first thing we're going to talk about is these pay by the week or pay by the month places where it's not really financing, you're just paying for it in smaller amounts over time. And if you stop paying, they come back and get the item from you. So it could be furniture, it could be a TV. So we're going to focus on a TV and talk about how bad of deals these are. Renison is going to be the big one around here that does this. So you may be looking at this TV, man, I would love to have a 65-inch TV. That would be awesome to have in my house. And it's only 25 bucks a week, okay? But if your thought is, can I afford this? And what you're meaning by saying is, can I actually pay $25 a week? And the answer is probably yes, but that is not the question you should be asking yourself. Okay, once again, escaping poverty is not thinking short term by the week, it's thinking long term. What is this TV going to actually cost me? Well, it says right here, they don't lie about it, they can't legally. It's going to cost you $1,950 to get this TV. This is not a $1,950 TV, as we'll see. And by the way, if you straight out of high school are buying $2,000 TVs, you're making poor financial decisions anyways, which is a video for another day. But now you're looking at the same as cash price, that's only $900, 850 bucks. That's still too much for you to be spending on a TV, but you're also, chances are you're not going to get that price because that is a price. It's basically kind of like where they give you a certain amount of time to pay off the item, and if you don't pay off the item in that time, then you have to pay all these additional fees or interest on top of that. So the same as cash price is, it seems so much better because it's under half of what the total cost to own is, but it's still not a good deal. So let's talk about what a good deal is. Well, a good deal is to save up your own money and go buy the TV outright. So here's I don't know if it's the exact same TV, but it's got all the same specs, smart TV, 4K, same size, 500 bucks. So if you're thinking long term, I only have to save up 500 bucks to buy this TV versus I only have to pay, if you're thinking short term, $25 a week, and it ends up costing you 4 times as much for the same thing. Another thing you can ask yourself is, when you're making a big purchase like this, especially early on in life, do I really need the 65-inch? Could I get something smaller? And do I really need, can I find a cheaper option? So here's an RCA TV that's 65-inch. Okay, it's got worse ratings, but you want to go look at that and see, well, why does it have worse ratings? Sometimes they show up broken. They're more likely to get broken in the box, which if you're buying from Walmart, it doesn't matter. You just take it back to the store. But this is also not a smart TV, but you're probably going to be using Roku or Amazon Fire Stick or your game console or something like that to turn your TV into smart TV. So really think about big decisions when you're first getting out there. Don't spend $2,000 on a TV when there's a $400 TV option that's just as good. Another thing they also sell is they do furniture. Furniture is the exact same way. You're going to pay 4 times the amount for the furniture if you buy by the week. Save up the money, or get some old furniture from your parents' house. Do anything other than take something out on credit or pay a weekly or monthly fee for something that's going to end up costing you 4 times as much in the future. Okay, you got to think long term. All right, now we're going to talk about other types of debt that actually have interest that accrues. So credit cards. Credit cards are another one where they're actually a good thing in helping you build credit if they're used properly, and I'll do another video on that. But let's talk about the interest rates on credit cards. So let's say you're just starting out, you'll probably get a 22% interest rate. What does that mean? That means that over the course of a year, whatever your average balance of that credit card is, you're going to pay an additional 22% in interest. So what does that look like? Well, let's say you have a $1,000 average balance on that credit card throughout the year. Okay, so you've been charging a little bit, but you've been paying a little bit off, but it's still stuck around that $1,000 because, well, you don't have $1,000 to pay that off due to whatever reason. So what does that mean? That means throughout the year, you're going to pay $220 in interest. Now, that doesn't sound too bad. I borrowed $1,000. I only had to pay $220 in interest, and I had it for a whole year. But once you've paid this $220, it really doesn't matter because you still have to pay the initial money that you owe them, $1,000. So always having a balance on your credit card is going to basically take your buying power and reduce it by $220 every $1,000 you have on that credit card. So think long term. Don't think, well, I'm getting this $1,000 now. and I only had to pay $220 later. That's not the way to think. Think, if I spend this $1,000 now, I'm actually reducing my buying power by $220 if I hold that balance over the whole year. Now, if you pay it off each month, good thing about credit cards, if you do pay them off each month, you do not have to pay this interest rate. So let's say you put $100 in gas on it and you pay it off at the end of the month and you have no balance on your credit card, you don't have to pay interest on that $100. So credit cards can actually be a good thing. Let's go back and talk about student loans. Student loans, obviously not all of us can avoid student loans due to one reason or the next, but one thing you definitely want to avoid on student loans is do not take out student loan for degrees that have high unemployment rates. So degrees in like liberal arts, philosophy, even some stuff like earth sciences and anthropology. You know, I'm pretty sure we already know what every type of spider is, so anthropology is just a huge waste of time. So if you're going to go for one of those degrees that has high unemployment rates, or that's, you know, some people would even say it's a waste of time. They're not a waste of time, but if they have high unemployment rates, do not take out a lot of student loans on. You should only go after one of those degrees if someone else is paying for your college, you're getting scholarships, stuff like that, or you're just so invested, you just love that material so much that you'll have no problem finding a job. You'll be so enthusiastic about it, you'll have no trouble finding a job. If that doesn't sound like you, you need to go after a degree that can actually let you get a job. So let's talk about a student loan. So it wouldn't be uncommon in Oklahoma to have $50,000 in student loan debts when you graduate. That doesn't sound that bad. Now, what's the normal interest rate? Well, if you don't have subsidized government loans, your interest rate is going to be 6.8%, somewhere around there. So let's take a look at that. What does that look like? Well, your first year alone is going to be $3,200 in interest. Now, that money is just thrown away to the people that gave you money. Once again, if your student loan, if you think of it as an asset of having that degree and you can make more money in the future, that's okay. But if you're not looking at college as an asset, or if you're getting a degree that doesn't really let you have many job options, then that is basically $3,200 that you threw away. So what's the total cost of $50,000 in student loans? It's actually going to cost you, over the course of 10 years, just how long you can pay it back, $79,000. So once again, we want you to think long term. $50,000 in student loans, think, how much is this going to cost me in the long run? It's going to cost you $19,000 of interest, which is money that just goes up in smoke. And you have to, don't forget, you have to pay off the initial $50,000 that you actually borrowed. So what's amazing around this? Well, I'll post a video on college later. But the best option to be thinking about right now is scholarships, scholarships, scholarships. There's scholarships for everything. It really takes a lot of personal motivation to seek them out and actually fill out the forms and get those things. But any little money you can cut off this 50 grand is going to save you a lot of interest in the long run. All right, next topic, buying a house. I know a couple of y'all are 5, 10, 15 years away from even thinking about this, but it's good to talk about. House interest rates are generally lower, generally because they only let people with fairly good credit and financial situations buy a house, but the interest rates are lower. So in this scenario, let's say you bought a $100,000 house at 4% interest, which wouldn't be unheard of. Now, the hard thing right now is going to be finding a $100,000 house because the housing market is insane. But who knows what's going to happen in the future. But this is our example. So a $100,000 house. Now, this is one of the rare occasions where it's okay to think kind of short term on it, because you need to be asking yourself, how much can I afford a month? Okay, with other things, you really shouldn't be asking yourself that, because that is short term thinking. You really want to ask yourself, how much is it going to cost me in the long run? So how much is this $100,000 house going to cost you in the long run? Well, if you keep it over the entire 30-year loan, you're going to pay $72,000 in interest. That's $72,000 that once again goes up in smoke. Now, the reason this isn't that big of a deal, this $72,000 isn't that big of a deal, because ideally, if you bought a house in a good area, the house would have appreciated by almost that exact same amount, or at least close to it. So buying a house is one of the few things where it's okay to think short term on. I'll have a video on that as well. That'll go into more detail on what I mean by that. But the interest rate on a house, the $70,000, is not as big of a deal as the interest rate on like student loans. because the house can actually appreciate. It actually is worth more as the time goes on, assuming you take care of it. Used car. This is a big one. I definitely want to do a video on this because there's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of people that try to target low income. They try to target minorities. They try to target young people, and their moral compass is a little bit loose. So let's talk about what a normal situation with debt on a car is. So you get out of high school, you get a sweet job making, I don't know, $15 an hour. So you're thinking, I want to go get myself a decent car. So you go to the used car lot and you spend $10,000 on a used car. Okay, $10,000 is not going to be a great car, but it's probably going to be a good car. But the question is, how much that car really cost you? And I'm going to do a video on buying a car as well, because the truth is, if you're buying at a used car lot, this $10,000 car is probably an $8,000 car if we really think about it. But what is this going to cost you? Well, if your credit sucks, don't worry, they'll finance you. Oh, they'll finance you, 12%. That wouldn't be uncalled for. I had a friend in high school pay 18% on car loans, so 12% is definitely doable. So how much is this $10,000 car actually going to cost you? Well, assuming you don't have to put any more money into it, which is a big assumption, this car is going to cost you $13,300. Okay, that's $3,300 in interest. So this $10,000 car, I want you to think long term. How much is it actually costing me? Not just, oh, it's only costing me $200 a month, so I can afford that. No, it's costing you $13,000. Is there something you could have spent that money better on? We'll do a video on that as well. Okay, this is gonna be an ongoing segment, escaping poverty. Now, I want to get on to one of the worst things you can possibly do. If you haven't listened to anything else I said, this is gonna be it. Payday loan advances, or payday advance loans. This is one of the scammiest businesses out there. The government doesn't regulate it. They have a lot of pull. They have a lot of say in. They have a lot of power to lobby state and the federal governments, and it basically allows them to keep doing these payday advance loans. And the interest rates and the fees, they're not criminal, but they're definitely, just like some of the used car salesmen, it's morally questionable. And the best thing you can do is stay away from it. So let's look at what these payday advance loans look like. And we'll talk about how they also prey on, they're going to prey on minorities, poor people, and young people, which is going to be you once you get out in the real world. So let's say, all right, I need $150 because I'm behind on my car payment that I probably shouldn't have bought in the first place. So let's say I borrow $150 from them. Doesn't seem like a big deal. I can pay that back, no problem. Okay, what's my interest rate? 633%. That's significantly higher than anything else we've talked about. Okay, now where am I getting 633% from? My aunt a couple years ago she's not good with finances, got a payday loan advance at 633%. Okay, now you may be thinking, well, I'm going to pay this off in a month, so really that 633% doesn't pertain to me. Okay, so let's see how much that would cost you in a month. Well, each month you're going to pay about $75 in interest. How much is that in a year? About $1,000. Okay, so that $150 is costing you every month $75 in interest. But you're thinking, okay, but I really, really needed the money. So I take my $150, a month later, I only have to pay back $225. That doesn't seem bad, but you're absolutely wrong because they have fees. They have loan origination fees. They have all sorts of BS fees they tack on there. So if you have this $100 for 1 month, and you go back in there and say, okay, I want to be done with y'all guys. I want to get everything paid off. They're going to say, okay, well, you owe us $75 in interest and $75 in fees. Sorry about my writing. So that $150 after 1 month is going to cost you $300. Now, you may be thinking, but there was a situation where I had to have this money, okay? There are some other options for if you have to have this money right now than walking into a payday loan advance because it's not criminal, but it should be what they can charge you to borrow a little bit of money for a short period of time. So once again, you borrow $150. If you have that money for a month, it's going to be $300 to be done with them without them coming and trying to collect that money. So what's some other options for payday loan advance? Well, go to a family member, ask for money, tell them you'll pay them a little interest on it. Obviously, you're not going to pay them double in a month because, nobody with a soul would do that. But, go to family, go to friends, and then if you borrow money from family and friends, pay them back. Make that a priority. You don't want to be the person who's the sponge that keeps borrowing money and never pays it back. There are also some cell phone apps out there that have a lot less overhead than those in-person payday loans. And those are good places to go to try to get money. So there's some actually payday advance apps out there, and they're not called that. I would Google money borrowing apps and then look at reviews and stuff like that. Some of them are fairly cheap, and they're definitely not going to cost you double what you took out just for money. So if you're ever in a pinch like that, that's one of those things that you can take a look at. Do not do a payday loan advance. Okay, just default on the car. I mean, it's gonna be so much better in the long run. If you're backed in a corner, hopefully you have that credit card there that's a 22% interest rate versus this payday loan, which is 633. You want that credit card as your backup. Don't use this stuff as your backup. Okay, try to always be living your life where you have a backup that's better than this. Okay, this is the absolute worst case scenario, this payday advance loan or anything like that. These I forgot what they're called. They're called unbacked loans, basically where you're getting money and you're not giving any collateral. I think that's what they're called. You got to stay away from those. They are not criminal, but they're definitely immoral, and they're definitely going to lead you down a long life of a debt spiral. That's all I got, guys. Have a good Wednesday, and I'll see you next week.